Welcome to OneLeg Up, where we discuss how you can deliver the very best customer experience and how you can achieve zero marketing waste. I'm Ed Davis, the Chief Operations Ninja here at OneLeg, and today I'm joined by our creative partner, Beri Cheetham, Creative Director at the Gate San Francisco. Beri, how are you doing today?
Remarkably well, Ed. How are you?
Remarkably well myself. Why are you remarkably well?
Well, I'm in California, so that's pretty good. As you can tell, I'm not from California. I'm from London, and anything that isn't grey and drizzly is a bonus to me. Although I am sunburnt today, and it is February.
Clearly, the west end of London being there in California. Um, right. So today we've got Beri on as our very special guest. Because one of the things that we deal with on a day in day out basis is creativity, and Barry's one of the most creative, um, honest, remarkable, as we've used a couple different times here already, people when it comes to creativity, and nobody has probably as distinct a view about creativity, how it gets used within marketing and how it should be used within marketing and branding as Barry does. And so we wanted to bring him on today, get his views, share them with our audience, and then just sort of take it from there. And so I think, Barry, where I'd like to start is actually just a bit of a curveball. Um, you've been in agencies for decades, even though you are a boyish 22. And if I'm correct, you grew up in the business, so to speak. Did you not?
I did. My father was in advertising, and he took me into an ad agency. I think it was either Grey or FCB when I was about 3 years old, maybe even younger. And I remember going in there. He was a strategic planner, and he took me into the agency. Recognized in me from an early age that I was never smart enough to be a planner, but he thought, "Well, you can draw, so I'll lob you into the creative department." And there was this sort of utopia of marker pens, wall to wall, screwed up
Mm-hmm.
paper, people with their feet up on their desk, the smell of cigarettes, probably the smell of whiskey or something as well, and a smell of other illegal substances, I would imagine. And I was hooked from a ridiculously early age and thought that's what I want to do. And from then on in, I had set up my sights on being a creative director. So yes, you might say I've been in the business for years.
Nice. And so I think given that sort of background, you've got to have a really interesting creativity because, as I said, you were born into it. It's not something you went to school, obviously, and you've gone through courses and you've apprenticed and all that kind of stuff. But I, I've always just sort of felt like you have been able to tap into um, the most basic fundamentals of creativity and explain it really really well and why it's needed and so on and so forth, but you can couple that with the rational and the strategy part of it, which a lot of creative people can't do. So how did that come about? How do you define creativity, and what's, where do you stand on, creativity being at the forefront of communications?
Well, to break down your question succinctly, I think that firstly, try and imagine a world without creativity, and it's a pretty boring world, and it's a pretty grey. Certainly, in the world of marketing, everything would look the same, and everybody would have the same tools or access to the same things, and therefore nothing really stands out. There's no product development. There's no great advertising or marketing of that product. It's a dry vanilla world, and it's pretty unexciting. Um, and the great thing about creativity, I think, is that it certainly doesn't reside purely in a creative department. Having worked with you and worked with Vic, I can see creativity within both of you. It's just that we've just got different ways of expressing that creativity. Through me, it's words and pictures primarily. That's the way I execute creative work, obviously, with an idea. Um, so creativity, and this is what I foster within agencies, isn't something that you go to a creative department for. Either your culture is creative or it isn't. And if you look at the most successful companies in the world, creativity is omnipresent in them. You only need to look at Apple, for example, and they stood the test of time, not only because they constantly innovated, constantly created within their product, but in the way that they went to market as well, or go to market even still. They're constantly pushing their barriers, constantly developing new products that represent what the customer, what the consumer is moving towards as well. So that's a very sort of generic way of looking at it. But from the standpoint of just purely marketing, it is a tool like any others that you can unlock, and it's the one thing, one huge differentiator that you can have above and beyond your competitor, and that's what's going to set you apart. So yes, you can buy technology, and you can use technology differently, and you can be the first to market with something that's innovative. But creativity and being the first to market with a message or a product that nobody else has is a game changer.
That's a really interesting segue there, because one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you is, one leg. While we work across a number of industries, of course, one of the focus we have is the home improvement industry, and I know we've talked about it. We were just talking about it earlier today that a lot of these companies in the home improvement industry, you know they're always going, if you're a roofing company, you're always going to show the roof of the house, and if you're a solar company, you're going to show the solar panels on the roof of the house and whatnot. And so what what I want to ask is, where do the ideas come from, which is interesting to me in and of itself, but more importantly, and probably where I'd like you to start, why is it important to have creative that is unique?
Well, what you're talking about, I think, is the curse of the template, and it's
Mm,
when something is
yeah,
successful for one person, people try to emulate it, copy it, and clone it, and therefore think that they will have the same sort of success. So that's why, particularly in the industry that you just talked about, that vertical, everything looks almost identical, and everything from a website to television advertising to print advertising or social posts or whatever it is, it all looks the same. So why is it unique? Well, firstly, it's a little bit like dressing differently. If you want to think about it as the sort of Stone Age times of trying to attract a mate. Um,
sure,
if you look like everybody else, why what's special about you? Why would somebody choose you over somebody else?
right,
Which is about as primitive as it gets in terms of an analogy, but um, I think of it as how competitive do you want to be? How if you went to market with the same thing that everybody else has, and look the same as everybody else, you are literally setting fire to money. And there's easier ways to burn through cash if that's what you so desire. By being different in not just what you say, but where you say it, is the thing that's going to make people take notice. Um, and why is it important? I think it's because of people's attention span. Why would you? It is, if you think about it, even digital marketing is exactly the same as old school um, door drops and flyers and
sure,
things being posted through your letterbox. I can remember those days. I think I must have been a student at the time, but you could barely open the door for all the rubbish that was posted through your letterbox during the day. And it's the same really here. Is that if you think of your as your phone as a mailbox, it gets polluted and filled up very quickly with a lot of junk, and it's almost a bit of an insult. But when something looks different, or it's engaging, it enriches your life in some way, or makes you take note. It has a positive effect on you, and you cannot have that effect if you're the same as everybody else, because then you just become a pollutant, just like everyone else is.
no, I think that's a really apt description as to why we need creative, for sure. So, sort of along those similar lines, what's more important, to have creative that is aligned to the target audience, or creative that is aligned, or a manifestation of the vision and culture of the organization?
Reframe that. So what do you mean? You mean
So I think some companies just look at it. Okay, we need a creative idea, right? And they can hire somebody to come up with something that's interesting
mhm.
that may juxtapose them versus the rest of the juxtapose, however you say that, against the rest of the industry. But I've always believed that your creative needs to have a firm foundation or footing in the vision and the culture of your organization, so that it can a be sort of indoctrinated by the people, right, and vice versa, and potentially give it a bit more meaning.
Yeah,
But that's just my opinion. I'm just trying to figure out, do we need to be, does the creative need to be, is it better to have it aligned to the target audience, or is it better to have it grounded in the vision and the culture of the organization? If you need to make that distinction, I suppose.
if you need to make that distinction, but I think a great idea, and not just a good one, but a really really good one, a great idea starts from within the company itself, and it's a way of telling the story about the brand. So creativity in terms of marketing is basically storytelling. It's storytelling in terms of the company, what the founder stood for, or what the people stand for, the vision, and the cultural beliefs of that company. So, for example, your guiding principles is about trust, trust in the customer, trust in delivering on your promise. To tell that story is far more beneficial, for example, than just talking about your price, because anybody can compete on price, but you can't necessarily compete on promise and kept promises. So if your values are great and there's a really good story to mine in there, you should absolutely mine that. It isn't about plucking out an idea from the ether and then saying, "Well, this is a really be this," when you're not. And clearly, the most successful companies are the ones that talk about their story from within, and it galvanizes the culture of that business as well.
Right.
Because when everybody believes it, not just your customers, but from within, it's a far easier sell. So when you're engaging your audience and you're engaging your own people, and they all believe the same thing, say the same thing, and can describe the company in exactly the same way, that's a hugely powerful thing, because it creates the sense of belief that there's a far easier sell to potential customers.
Right. Well, I totally believe in that, and I totally believe that everything does have to start from within. Otherwise, you just sort of end up in this place where you've commoditized the creativity, you've commoditized the program.
Mhm.
But when it starts from within, there's clearly an investment in it.
Yeah.
So, just our last question is, and I think all agencies deal with this. I think we certainly come up against it. How do you, as a creative director, as an acting CMO in a lot of instances with the companies and clients that you work with, how do you move those companies, those CEOs, from a fear of change? Because typically, when you have a creative idea, it's usually different than what they've seen before, and you've got to convince them that that's the right way. And it could be grounded in the culture and the vision and the values and all that kind of stuff. Of course, it could. But how do you move them from fear of change and implementing your creative idea to sort of fear of missing out, and how do you, or do you play off that vulnerability that people all at once don't want to change, but
Mhm.
they also don't want to miss out on something because it might be good for them, their company, their business, whatever the case may be.
There's a wonderful quote, and I wish I had written it, which is, "If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less." And that's a great way to describe it. And also, I mean, for a start, if you don't want change and you don't want improvement in your business, don't bother recruiting me, because, well, why would you? If things are fine the way that they are, then carry on doing what you're always doing. And if you're one of these people that hopes you're going to get a different result by doing what you've always done, then you won't, and you will eventually fail anyway. And frankly, don't waste my time or
Right.
yours by engaging with me. But if you want to progress your business and talk and become much more relevant to a disengaged audience, then you need to do something about it. And it could be pretty fundamental things like how your brand looks and feels. Don't forget, all brands convey a message. Even just through their own semiotics, their color, the way that they use typography, the way that they use imagery, the way that they embrace diversity or not. Every sort of touch point is a chance to promote your business. And my job, and the way I see it, is looking at every single touch point, and that could be how you look and feel in social media, how you look and feel on television, how your packaging comes across, how your people come across. It's absolutely every single thing about you. And it isn't something you necessarily fix overnight, because you can't, but it is something you have to invest in terms of time. It doesn't happen in a heartbeat. And sometimes, and this is where it gets scary for some people, CEOs, is that the initial impact can be slowing down of sales or not moving of sales, because you're taking the customer on a slightly different path. But then what slowly starts to happen, and then quickly starts to happen, is you build momentum upon success. So success will breed success within an organization. A message will start to work and start to cut through, start to resonate, and that's when it grows into something that is really exciting. So that it's being willing to take that chance, being brave enough to take that chance, and also realize you don't have to do everything immediately. You can start small. So instead of spending hundreds of thousands or millions on everything, rebranding your company, whatever you do, small things first. We talk about sprints, don't we? And doing a few things really well to measure whether it's going to be successful or not. Because any good CEO can look at their own company and say whether she or he thinks it's successful, whether it needs fixing, and whether it needs a refresh and a reframing in terms of marketing. And again, that's sort of what I've become over the years. Yes, a creative person in my heart of hearts, but also a marketing person. So getting under the skin of the brand in terms of who are we really talking to? How do you segment that audience? What's the positioning that's going to really resonate with an audience? And looking at it from that before even starting creative. It's a bit like, the plumber that you invite into your house. Do they go straight to your taps and goes under your sink and then makes a hell of a noise, or do they sit back, assess the problem first, and then get stuck in and solve the problem?
Right. No, that's perfect. Thank you. That's all the time that we have today. We try to keep these things 15, 20 minutes or so. And we'll just move really quickly as Vic would make me do if he were here. Our shameless plug. If you in your business want original creativity and a campaign that drives conversions rather than just generate leads, contact OneLeg today. OneLeg, we are experts and practitioners of omotenashi, the highest level of customer care and experience. And you can find us all over the place, in all honesty. We're on our website. We're in LinkedIn. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. And, find us, follow us, rate us. We would appreciate it. And just as we close here, OneLeg believes poor marketing pollutes the planet, and the business is full of tired, outdated, indistinct, unremarkable, and underperforming marketing that sucks. But what sucks even more is that many companies have forgotten the most important thing of all, the customer. We are on a mission on behalf of our clients, customers, to change that. To learn more, go to oneleg.co. Thank you, Beri, for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.